Happy New Year! Did you have a good New Year? Did you miss me? Because I missed all of you. There were so many things that happened the past, 2 weeks I took off? God, what a lazy person am I. But there's so many things that happened the past 2 weeks, and there's so many things I wanted to talk about with you that, I've been dying to get back in front of this camera. First thing I want to do is say thank you to all of these new subscribers. I mean, I don't know where you all came from, but I am ever so grateful for you being here. When I first published the first video in July 24th, I had around 70 subscribers, and at the time of recording this video, I have 475 subscribers. That is insane to me. That's almost 500, which is half 1,000. And when you get to 1,000, that's 1/10 of 10,000. You know how math works. But yes, thank you for subscribing. Very happy to have you here. One other thing that I want to tell you about is that on my GitHub repo for the Console.Log website, I started a new project board planning all of the upcoming in-depth articles that I want to write about. So something about like how to use VS Code, how to use WebAssembly. I have a board that I've created that helps track in the open, because open source is cool, and you can also get involved, open issues about things you want me to talk about more in depth, things that you actually want to see happen sooner than later. Put a comment on that issue, and just, let's collaborate in the open, because this is a community that I'm trying to create here, and you are part of it. So whatever you want to have happen, let me know. With that being said, this is the week of January 2nd to January 7th. All you console loggers out here, console loggers, consolers, loggers, I'll have to figure out some name for all of us, but with the console people, there are many things that happened in the past week that I'm going to tell you about right this very second. First news item of the week, NPM, everybody's favorite package manager system, released their State of JavaScript Frameworks 2017 edition. In this blog post, which is a nice blog post with many pretty graphs, nice pretty images and words, gotta love words, they talked about the state of front-end frameworks as it looks to NPM. So what they looked at is, rather than look at popularity, because that's a very hard metric to look at, and there's a whole big disclaimer, which is good to have, they looked at the growth of NPM packages relative to the growth of the NPM registry itself. Because NPM is still growing, they actually looked at the growth of an NPM package over the growth of the, as a percentage of other frameworks at the time of the NPM registry. So that means that if there were 100 downloads in NPM and this framework got 10 downloads, that would mean it has 10% growth in that share. What was interesting about that is the first thing they talked about was Backbone, how it has been popular for a very long time. One of the original frameworks has still a big download percentage in the NPM ecosystem, and that's mostly because of legacy applications. But of course, the obvious story is that React is still growing very strongly, and of course, Vue is also on a very big explosive growth spurt. So it's very interesting, a little bit of navel gazing, but still very interesting to see. There are 2 more upcoming blog posts in this series. One is about the React ecosystem itself, which is also very interesting to delve into. That's coming up later this following week. And then there is a third post that will be about backend frameworks. So very interesting to see where the state of things is. Take everything with a grain of salt, because this is just based upon downloads, which doesn't mean anything beyond that, but it's still very interesting to see. Keeping in the trend of looking backwards instead of looking forwards, we have CodePen, everyone's favorite place to create beautiful animations and beautiful just playing with like new ideas and like how to make the web look beautiful and interact beautiful. CodePen published their most hearted pens of 2017, which is 100 pens in sorted order of number of hearts in 2017. And I love CodePen because it's really a place where people push the boundaries of what the web can do, thinking about creative ways to express animations, UX, and it's just a very cool place to get ideas and start to just imagine how you could perhaps make your future applications more of a joy to use. So check it out, it's fun, browse, it's very casual, but some interesting things to see. I always like one of my favorites is the one where you can scroll on the page and you have the cursor kind of like follow you like Snake. That was pretty cool. That was number I think 12 or 13 or something like that. Very cool, very interesting. And we can't start 2018 without a security scare, one of the biggest ones in a long time. This one started all the way down in the CPU level. You might have heard about it in the ecosystem, Meltdown and Spectre. It actually did have some effect on our browsers and the things that we use day to day. Namely that there are 2 things that are being changed in Chrome and Firefox to mitigate attack vectors. One of them is that shared array buffer, which is a new object type, is being disabled by default because of ways that it can be abused. That won't have a big effect because that's still a very small, not really used by the community at large. It's more for like compiled to languages, but still a bummer. And also performance.now is being, they're reducing its fidelity so that it won't be as accurate as it used to be. And again, that's to reduce the attack vectors. So these are going to come out in Chrome 64 later this month, Firefox 57, and they're trying to look into more in-depth fixes, but these are just like the quick fixes for now. FYI, it's not really going to affect you, but it's good to know that it has affected the web community as well. Bummer. And now the favorite part of my video is the last 3 topics, which is all about new fun frameworks and things that people are creating in the ecosystem. The first one is Zero Config UI for Jest. This is this very cool Electron application that is built that you can then plug into your Jest testing framework. If you know what Jest is, it's similar to Mocha, Jasmine. It is a test framework from people at Facebook, and it is Majestic is a zero UI config so that you can actually interact with your Jest code and tests through a UI. It's very pretty looking. I wish it was more in the browser because Electron seems a little bit unnecessarily overhead, but still very cool to see it there. This is definitely an example of where the ecosystem, when you have a very large ecosystem around a particular tool, there is all this like peripheral work that can go on that can actually make the entire experience a lot more pleasant to use. So very interesting, very cool to see. I haven't tried it out yet, but I do want to because, I mean, look at it. It looks cool. Number 2 is a new JavaScript framework because we do not have enough. I'm kidding. Stimulus is a new JavaScript framework from the people at Basecamp. And what's interesting about this framework is that it's trying to kind of be the way in which jQuery was the sugar on top of your old HTML applications where it just wanted to add interactivity. And this is more of a concrete way of doing that. So what does that mean is that Stimulus does not care about rendering your HTML. It expects there to be HTML on the page already. And you add Stimulus on top to add JavaScript behaviors and functionalities to it. So this is very good for the Basecamp people who use Ruby on Rails, where they have HTML being served up from the server, and they want to add interactivity on top, and this is how they got there. So it's a very nice, very clean framework. If you are in the situation where you have already a lot of HTML being rendered from the server, this is a good place to go to then actually add interactivity on top. Very cool. And last but not least, we have a framework called Sapper, which is from the creator of Svelte. Did I say that right? Svelte, S-V-E-L, that's such a hard, who spells words that way? But Sapper is taking the same ideas of Svelte where you have, rather than the framework being code, the framework is the compiler. And what that means is that you write your code in a way that you can feed it into a compiler, and that compiler will take all of your source code and export it into code ready to deploy onto your browser. And Sapper takes that same idea, but takes the ideas of Next.js, which is a fully featured framework for creating websites, and takes that idea and applies it to the compiler as framework idea. So you can make this entire website using code that's geared towards the compiler, and then Sapper will export out a website ready for you to consume. So it's a very interesting idea where the compiler is more involved, and you actually target the compiler than targeting the framework and the JS APIs that you use. So again, very interesting. They boast of many cool stats in there, being smaller and yada yada, but it's still just very cool to see this idea being put out into the ecosystem at large. So that was the Console.Log. That seemed pretty short to me. Hopefully you learned some things that you missed this past week. I don't think I'm going to have a more in-depth video this week for you, unfortunately. Somebody out in the ecosystem reached out and gave me the idea for those to be called Console.info, which was brilliant. So I'm going to adopt that. Thank you so much for that suggestion. So these more in-depth videos, like you saw with the React 16 video, I'll talk about as Console.info. But there is some upcoming, but I'm still getting back into the swing of things. You know how the new year goes. And if you have kept watching from this long in the video, again, I just want to say thank you for being here. I do truly mean it from the bottom of my heart to the top of my heart, all of my heart. Thank you for joining me on this journey of making videos and educating everybody in the ecosystem. So with that being said, all you console loggers out there, have a good week of coding, and I will talk to you next Monday. Bye.